As we all know, there is no shortage in hopeless and oppressively nihilistic video games out there to feed your own depression, but it's the obscure, enigmatic ones that enamor me the most. While I've yet to play his most prolific title, Buckshot Roulette, while searching for games to punish myself with after finishing everything David Szymanski had to offer, I came across a rather alluring free-to-play game by indie developer Mike Klubnicka. Entitled Unsorted Horror, its Steam description succinctly summarizes it as an anthology of 5 short horror games about machinery and dread. Without any prior knowledge, bar a few recommendations, installing it and subsequently finishing it felt like finding an old dusty box of discarded CD-ROMs in your parents' attic, only to discover them cursed with the oppressive dystopia of Half-Life and the cynical bleakness of Black Mirror. Generally speaking, while everything in here is open to interpretation, the overall premise, at least in my perspective, loosely focuses on a dying totalitarian world where a shadowy government-backed organization researches and experiments on some fusion of organism and technology living deep within the Earth. However, as implied through an uncertain timeline spread over many years, whatever they were working on seems to have breached containment and eventually ravaged the Earth, leading to the human population itself having to ironically resort to their own form of containment. Ultimately, we're only given a glimpse into this universe, as we serve as mere passive observers, filling the shoes of unfortunate souls who operate machines and technology, resulting in self-assured destruction. Hell, echoing the concept of Black Mirror, one could argue there's a bit of a dark satire beneath it all, about civil service and manual labour workers grinding out their days for a big bad boss with no reward or hope for a brighter, stable future. Now, to the lore-hungry gamers out there, I'm not going to be the one to give you a thorough explanation for what is actually going on. As I summarized, at best what I'll give you are some of my general theories to show how the story connects across all 5 games, but ultimately, if you want satisfying answers, what you personally put into it is what you'll get out of it. Instead, I want to take those unfamiliar with the game through the harrowing experience of actually playing it in the order I feel best exemplifies both the world building and the escalating horror within. So, brace yourself. Now, before we dive into the madness, this video is sponsored by Fume. As many of you likely know from watching my videos, I am a generally anxious person, and for years I've had this very unhealthy habit of biting my nails and skin, including inside my mouth, causing cuts, calluses, and ulcers. It's a bad habit that formed out of my inability to not fidget when under pressure or doing anything that I find mentally taxing, and it wasn't until I got my hands on Fume did I start to better channel my habits thanks to its satisfying magnetic fidget design. Fume is an award-winning flavoured air device that delivers great taste without any harmful chemicals, and for me serves as a pleasant stress stick to mellow out the tension and anxiety I feel when either sitting at my desk or out and about on social occasions and things just become too much. Fume contains no vapor, nicotine, or batteries and can be used anywhere. You simply insert non-toxic flavoured cores such as mint, pepper, orange vanilla, or my personal favourite, raspberry lemon, and have fun. Over 500,000 people have already made the switch to Fume as part of their habit change journey, so if you're ready to try it for yourself, now is the time. Fume continuously invests in third-party studies to ensure the safety of their products, and for a limited time only, you can order the Journey Pack using my code ryanhollinger and get a free Fume topper, an awesome accessory to level up your experience. Simply click the link tryfume.com/ryanhollinger or scan the QR code on screen to get yours today. Control Room Alpha is easily the shortest and most rudimentary game, but it serves as a decent tonal introduction to what these games entail, whilst leaning more on humour compared to the devastatingly grim tone of the other 4. In Control Room Alpha, you play as a new employee of a mysterious company that makes a recurring appearance throughout all the games, where you must operate a simple crane mechanism to collect 4 strange alien samples insinuated to be both dangerous and volatile. In fact, your supervisor says each vial is worth 1 million Vietnamese dong, which, just to subtly show how insignificant your life and well-being are compared to the goals of the company, converts to around $40, so That's motivating. I guess you could call unsorted horror an exercise in nihilistic monotony. Your sole existence across all 5 games is to operate janky mechanisms that invariably lead to some form of destruction. Oh yeah, I forgot to add, I hope you're not arachnophobic, because upon opening the chamber for the first time, it unleashes a dozen giant spiders that scatter into the darkness, which you know deep down in your soul are literally going to bite you on the ass at some point. Eventually, you'll inevitably drop one of the vials, causing you to venture out into the field to manually place it yourself, while your supervisor nonchalantly tells you that the spiders are completely harmless. Yet, it's obviously a pretty weak attempt at reassurance, because from your supervisor's perspective, it's better this than piss off your managerial overlords. From here, the game relies on brilliantly simplistic sound design, as you can hear those scampering fuckers in the darkness, leaving you to clench your asshole as you wait for them to pounce out the moment you put the vial in. But once you do, it plays on misdirection, as you safely return to the operation room with only one stray, cheeky spider crossing your path, fittingly indifferent to your existence. However, naturally, as you finish collecting samples, a strange orb emerges from the container, baffling your supervisor and suggesting something alien lurking deep below. Yet, before you have a chance to take it in, of course, a spider breaks through the window and attacks you. Now, I will say, it's not exactly the most compelling introduction, but it puts the general concept into effect. You are an employee, or rather more correctly, a mere expendable component to a system that does not care about you. It's a world where both morality and humanity are compromised. You are a soulless cog in a machine, a drone or puppet that exists merely to operate arbitrary, sometimes obtuse mechanisms and machinery that serve more function and purpose than you do. Is it a commentary on the class system and the debilitating effects of capitalism and power? Maybe. The other games seem to suggest a common theme of societal collapse and containment to an oppressive system that refuses to offer any real autonomy to the player and its inhabitants outside pressing a few buttons where the outcome is typically devastating and deadly. If you saw my video on David Szymanski's deep sea horror Iron Lung, then you'll understand why I followed that game up with this one, because they both sustain one common, if admittedly obvious observation in horror. Things are inherently much more terrifying when we're powerless to not only understand them, but truly control them. This takes us neatly into the second game, Carbon Steel, where once again we play a random employee tasked with uncovering something alien from deep within what I think is the Earth, but this time it's not just energy vials we're collecting. This time we have to extract it from mysterious creatures trapped in containers. This one definitely induces SCP Foundation vibes, as it builds slightly more on the world by giving you a glimpse of your arrival to the mysterious facility, where you're transferred to a lab deep below, echoing the original opening of Half-Life. Once there, the game further hammers in the theme of institutional oppression, when you're literally forced to spend whatever free time you have in what's essentially a disgusting, unsanitized and dilapidated prison cell. The gameplay is actually more involved this time. Hell, I'd go as far as to say it's a pretty engrossing loop once you figure out how any of the machinery around you works, because like with Control Room Alpha, there aren't any eligible instructions to guide you, forcing you to figure things out on your own. Each day, you have to pull up a creature from below, determine what class and depth it is, and create the right formula of anesthetic to sedate it so you can extract some form of energy from it. As time goes on, new mechanics are introduced to make your job just that little bit harder, but what's more interesting is that each night, your character has glimpses of a bright, peaceful sky as though visions of a happier place and time, something which we'll actually come back to in a later game, but one night in particular, you have a horrific nightmare where one of the eldritch abominations from below breaches containment and nearly escapes. My theory by this point was that whatever energy or organism exists deep below has a monstrous effect on whatever it comes into contact with, like the spiders in Control Room Alpha, which will come back to haunt haunt us in a later game. Judging from the nightmare, my instinct combines Cronenberg's The Fly with Carpenter's The Thing. I initially suspected it was humans who fell victim to company negligence when previously working with the organism. However, the game comes with two endings that tie into the theme of oppression. One where you awaken to find your lab breached yet somehow able to leave without resistance, and one where you apparently become the first human test subject. My assumption here is that finding yourself trapped in the container is the real ending, because it seems just too good to be true that this would be the one game where our protagonist literally walks away scot-free. It could be the anesthesia given to you in the chamber, making you dream of a somewhat better outcome, echoing the vague dream of a bright blue sky, because ultimately in these games there is no escape. There is no home to go back to. Now, what is home exactly in this miserably oppressive world where horrors not only lurk beneath us, but clearly all around us? Well, Concrete Tremor takes things in a slightly different direction, albeit to a much more harrowing level. Think of this one as brutalist battleships, because we open with our protagonist collecting whatever gruel are given to the inhabitants of various tower blocks, once again reflecting the conditions of prison life, until you decide to head for the roof, where what awaits us is a broodingly godlike structure and another instance of containment. Switching to a military helicopter above, it confines us to a sort of battle royale Hunger Games type scenario, where we're fighting life or death for our freedom and survival, or at least what we think is our freedom and survival. Like with Iron Lung, the illusion is always fleeting. As I said, the gameplay here is basically brutalist battleships. Your character is seemingly selected at random to represent their sector in picking coordinates to set off bombs, with the goal of destroying all of your opponent's occupied tower blocks before they can destroy yours. What compounds the misery further is that if either of you miss your shots during your turn, the opposition will be granted a phone call to one of the residents of a tower block in order to expose their coordinates for a free shot. I'm sure by now you can tell that winning does not grant any real form of reward, or at least depending on how you look at it. Whether you win or lose, Concrete Tremor makes it clear on the back of the box that there is only one ending, only one way to escape this nightmare. You get one final phone call from those in charge, you reach into a side drawer containing a gun, and you shoot yourself. Both participants always die, but technically they're free from the misery. It might not be the freedom they desire, but in this world, beggars can't be choosers. Now, the last two games do technically present us with cases where our protagonists make a choice, but as expected by now, it's a futile gesture. Rather than ending by finishing the tasks they started, these two games basically punish their protagonists for trying to rebel against the machine or tamper with it in any way. The other side, I feel, is the game set in the most present timeline, and the reason will become clear by the end, but for now you only have one task. Escape your confines by maintaining a drill, trying to cut through several layers of steel between you and the outside world. It's not too dissimilar from Carbon Steel, in that you have to precisely poke and prod at machinery in a specific order, from replacing the drill head to changing the oil and coolant to charging the battery. Gameplay-wise, it's surprisingly intuitive, but requires some modest level of coordination because once you've completed the first layer, an alarm is sounded giving you exactly 5 minutes before security arrives. Suddenly, the pressure is on, and trust me, this game knows how to get under your skin because it is deliberately contrived and cumbersome to do things in the correct order. For example, to modify the drill, you have to move it to a vise, lock it in place, unscrew the parts, pick up the correct tools and replacements, refit everything, place the drill back in the rack, and oh yeah, don't forget to reboot the computer before the drill can even commence again. Thematically, Thematically, calling back to Black Mirror, you are still always at the mercy of the machine and strictly have to follow its commands to fix it, ironically taking away your autonomy and making you subservient to it, despite your goal of trying to achieve freedom and said autonomy. Humanity's most precious resource of time is not on your side, as it almost feels like the computer and drill are taking their sweet ass time just to spite you, and once again, like in Control Room Alpha, causing you to helplessly clench your asshole hoping you followed the correct commands, still knowing deep down in the bottom of your soul that more problems are inevitably around the corner. It's deceptively simple, yet oddly satisfying, and even rewards efficiency, like how it takes close to a minute to charge the battery, giving you free time to fix other parts to make the most of the time allotted to you. Yet, upon finishing the final layer, I was reminded of that bright blue sky from Carbon Steel, that sense of peace and serenity, a life far escaped from the cold, dingy, oppressive misery we've come to see thus far. There is hope beyond these walls, freedom, tranquility, as though it's all too good to be true. And well, that's because it is. You'll naturally wander towards the single tree as the beautifully ethereal music conveys a dreamy quality. But then you'll find the note, confirming it's all a lie. The music suddenly shifts to something powerful, dreadful, and industrial. In the distance, a silhouette emerges fast, a spider significantly more advanced and deformed than the ones from Carbon Steel, but the game abruptly ends before you meet your horrible fate. This takes us to our final kick in the bollocks, the Tartarus Engine, which, like the other side, is another futile effort at autonomy. The reason I chose this one last is because I think this is loosely the closest one we have to a prologue, as it helps contextualize how the organisms fuse with technology, as a brief opening text confirms that deep below the Earth, construction began on a supercomputer that a decade later saw it imitate the first reality of eternal torment. Wait, hang on a minute. That sounds an awful lot like Harlan Ellison's 1967 short story I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, about a supercomputer that becomes an omnipotent god that destroys the Earth and perpetually tortures survivors out of pure hatred for the humanity that created it, thus serving as a nihilistic commentary on the mutually self-assured destruction mankind always seems to tiptoe on the precipice of, which at the time was heightened by the threat of post-war nuclear annihilation. I covered that one a very long time ago. In Tartarus Engine, you play as one of 4 technicians attempting to take control of a machine that allows them to teleport their consciousness into simulations. The catch is that several years within the simulation apparently translates to only a few seconds on Earth, thus giving them control over humanity's most precious resource, which worked against us in the other side, time. Now, a quick side note, I did pick up on one character referring to the occupants within the facility as inmates, which not only echoes the prison motif consistent throughout all the games, but also seems to confirm to me that some characters, like maybe the one in Carbon Steel, are most likely actual prisoners put to work by this mysterious government. Think of it as a fake expendable guinea pig operation masked as a rehabilitation program. Anyway, it's with this where I'm reminded of Stephen King's 1981 short story The Jaunt, which I covered in a video a few years back on the Backrooms, so I'm going to dig that up and plagiarize that script to summarize it again to give you context for what happens in Tartarus Engine. The Jaunt tells a story of a future where humanity has discovered instantaneous teleportation across the universe, but for the procedure to work, humans have to be sedated before jaunting, and the reason for this becomes clear when our protagonist father tells his kids, who are about to jaunt for the first time, the story of the first person to jaunt without sedation. Basically, the government offered a serial killer a full pardon in exchange for jaunting without anesthesia, most likely expecting the worst, assuming the pardon was a bluff to get a volunteer, which is technically what they get when the killer instantaneously jaunted, only to return shaking, his hair now completely white, his eyes peeled wide open, and when asked what happened, all he simply said was, "It's eternity in there," before dropping dead. It's concluded that while jaunting is instantaneous for those sleeping, for a conscious mind it feels agonizingly endless, as though trapped in a perpetual white, empty purgatory. Oh, but we're not done yet. The story ends with the father awakening to discover one of his children held their breath during anesthesia, and is now white-haired, twisting in pain, clawing at their eyes, screaming to their father, "Longer than you think, Dad, longer than you think." If you couldn't guess where I'm going with this, the technicians fail in their efforts by naively following code they discovered as opposed to created themselves, resulting in them having their consciousness pulled deeper and deeper into the machine which likely created said code, with the one simulation we're aware of being a confined room where the occupants forever peel potatoes. In other words, they somehow make their oppression much, much more unbearable. You could say this game has the paradox of being the most plot-driven, but arguably the most obscure in its outcome, but for me it consolidates the themes of the overall package. At first we're dealing with an oppressive society dictated by power, but soon we see reality for what it truly is, one collapsing under the weight of that power when it gets out of control, when the machines, technology and infrastructure we create outgrow our purpose. We take our arrogance for granted as we become inferior to what we thought we could control. And that is my experience with Unsorted Horror. Now, apparently there is also an Unsorted VHS, so I'm going to check that out when I get a minute, but until next time, let me know if you enjoy this video and the one on Iron Lung, because I'm hoping to do more game stuff on the regular in the near future, but that will totally depend on how people see it, really. Stay safe, stay away from dodgy CD-ROMs, and I'll see you all very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye.